Some international news now. It has been over 6 months since Russia invaded Ukraine. Since the 24th of February, millions of people have fled the country. Thousands of soldiers on both sides have died, and many cities in Ukraine are in ruins. Globally, too, there's been a huge impact with economic reprisals against Russia and the rising cost of oil and gas hitting many economies hard. Let's go live to the Ukraine capital of Kiev now and speak to our correspondent Julia Chapman. Julia, thank you so much for joining us. So 6 months since this war started, what is the situation in Kiev in terms of the fighting and the actual state of the city?
The city has returned almost to normal since the invasion began on February 24th, just over 6 months ago. We do get the occasional air raid siren here. We've had 2 today, but more or less people are going about their business, going to work, returning home, going to schools, without ordinary life being really affected here in the city. Most Ukrainians living in Kiev don't really respond when the air raid siren goes off. So here in the capital, there really isn't a feeling of what is going on beyond the city. We had to go through a checkpoint in order to enter Kiev. There are, of course, some statues that have been boarded up to protect them in case of an airstrike against the city. The cultural heritage, a big priority for Ukraine. But certainly what we are seeing now, as opposed to the early days of the fighting, is that there is no Russian attempt to take control of the capital now. They are focusing their attentions on the east of the country. Many military analysts saying that is because they were unsuccessful. They had to be pushed back by the Ukrainians. We are now starting to see a Ukrainian counteroffensive in parts of the country in the south and indeed the east. And it does appear that after moderate Russian gains further into the country, we may now have started to be seeing the reverse, the Ukrainians slowly grabbing back territory in parts of the country.
One of the big concerns at the moment is what's going on at the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia. Reports of shelling in that area. We know a few months ago it was a target and it seemed to be sort of kept together. Yesterday, the IAEA saying that Russia was storing military equipment at the nuclear plant. They're warning of a massive threat to nuclear safety. And as we know, with nuclear power, if there's a meltdown, it doesn't just affect the small geographic area that you're in. It could be across country. So what is the latest on Zaporizhia? Has Russia agreed to ring fence the area and stay away?
They haven't, certainly, and of course a nuclear meltdown is of grave concern, not just to Ukrainians, but many Europeans that could experience the fallout of any kind of catastrophe at Zaporizhia. We saw the UN nuclear inspectors go in last week. They were shown around the plant by Russian military officers who are holding control of the facility, but it is Ukrainian staff that is still operating it. Now, there have been some incidents of shelling. We understand from the UN International Atomic Energy Agency report that came out yesterday that there has been quite a lot of damage to the plant itself, and as of this moment the plant is not connected to the Ukrainian power network. That is a big worry. Now, it is sustaining its own energy supply for now, but there are really big concerns that if the fighting doesn't stop, if there is no consistent power supply to the facility, then there could be a really serious risk here. Now, Ukraine, of course, wants to take the power plant back into its own control, but it has been under Russian control for many months now. The report suggests the demilitarization of this area around the Zaporizhia power plant, but so far Russia doesn't seem willing to engage with that yet.
Let's take a look at the global consequences. I mean, they've been dire. We're also seeing that Putin is now threatening to cut off all gas and oil supplies, but there has been some breakthrough in getting grain shipments out of Ukraine, particularly to the Horn of Africa that so desperately needs it. How are those shipments going?
Well, that's right. We do understand that there will be more shipments of grain. Ukraine says it is planning to send more of its resources to the Horn of Africa. And of course, that is only possible because of a deal that was brokered in Turkey a while ago between Russia and Ukraine, actually separate deals brokered by the UN in order to facilitate the movement of these goods from Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea, which of course are under threat of assault from Russian missiles. There have been several shipments that have gone out, some of them commercial, some of them humanitarian, but undoubtedly this is one of the major consequences of the war so far. There are huge shortages of grain. Ukraine is one of the largest producers in the world. It really does account for much of Africa's supply of food resources. And so the ability to get these products out of the country has been critical, and it is still going. So at the moment, this is considered to be a success story. But as you say, there are constant threats. And of course, we are hearing more about the picture in Europe, for example, with its energy security. Many European countries have been very reliant on Russia for gas. That can no longer be the case because although they were trying to wean themselves off, Russia is now turning the taps off altogether from many of its pipelines. So security of energy resources in Europe is becoming a very big issue. Prices are going through the roof, and this is something affecting millions of people across the continent.
So it's been more than 6 months now, and when this war started, a lot of people thought that Russia, and in fact Russia thought it would be a very quick and easy victory. But we've seen the Ukrainians fighting back. We've seen Volodymyr Zelensky with a lot of allies. I mean, I think Ollie Barrett was just telling us that Liz Truss, one of her first calls was in fact to the Ukraine's leader to show her ongoing support. What are the views on when and how this war might end?
This is turning into a much more long-running conflict than many people could have imagined 6 months ago. Of course, we have seen quite a lot of determination by the Ukrainian armed forces who have been trying to defend their country. But of course, that is in no small part down to the support they've been getting from the West. Huge amounts of money have been sent to Ukraine for military equipment. They have been training Ukrainian forces in other countries, including in the UK. Which has been one of the biggest supporters of the Ukrainian cause in the face of Russian aggression. But undoubtedly, this is a conflict that could now continue not for weeks or months, but likely for years, according to many military analysts. We are seeing Ukraine trying to take back territory in the east of the country, in the south of the country, but we've also seen some missile strikes in Crimea, which of course has been annexed by Russia since 2014. Only today, actually, Ukraine admitted that it was behind those attacks. Ukraine says it is determined to take back not just the territory that it's lost since February 24th, but all of the Donbas region, where there has been a war fought since 2014, and indeed Crimea as well. And that would look like a very difficult, very different conflict to the picture that we're seeing today.
Well, thank you so much. Our correspondent in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, Julia Chapman.